So it is often said that success has 1,000 owners, but the success of this conference owes a great deal to the initiative and the inspiration of our next speaker. For years, and that's not an exaggeration, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse has encouraged Salve's Pell Center and the Naval War College to work more closely together, to find a project that would not only benefit both institutions, but one where we could use our collective resources to advance important causes, not just in Newport, but on a much broader scale. Senator Whitehouse, thank you for your persistence in helping us to forge this partnership. And thank you for your leadership on the issue of climate change, something you have worked for and worked at with a vigor and single-minded focus throughout all of your time in the United States Senate. Colleagues, please welcome me in joining Senator Sheldon Whitehouse to the podium. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kelly. It is truly wonderful to be here. And my job this afternoon is almost entirely just to say thank you. So first, thank you to Salve, to President Armstrong for hosting us here and for all the work that went in with the Naval War College to getting Newport Forum 2 underway. Big thank you to Jim Ludis of the Pell Center, who's been the operationalizer of this. And it gives me particular delight as the son of a Foreign Service officer to see the Pell Center, where Claiborne Pell was such a friend of the Foreign Service and so important to diplomacy as chairman of Foreign Relations. We're now working together on this forum, again, with the Naval War College. So Kelly and Jim, bravo, thank you, well done. I would also just take a moment to recognize that there are members of Senator Pell's family who are here, and it means a lot to all of us to have you here. Thank you so much. The Pell legacy is alive and well, particularly at Salve, and Jack and I do our best to try to keep it alive in the Senate also. Admiral Walker, thank you. I think you're my 4th Naval War College president along the road of this project, and I'm grateful that you have stepped in so forcefully to make this happen and to provide its support and to pick up next year's. And a particular thank you to also the Naval War College Foundation, George Lang and his team, and all of those of you who are on the board of the foundation. It makes it a lot easier for the War College to do certain things when it has the support of the foundation. And so a big thank you also to the foundation. We overlook what a big deal Jack Reed is sometimes in Rhode Island. The guy's the chairman of the Armed Services Committee of the United States Senate. So having him here and supporting this event is truly consequential. And as the years go by, I think he will be able to help develop this into a truly national event, and I look forward to supporting him in that role. Secretary of the Navy Del Toro has arrived. Welcome, Mr. Secretary. The Secretary has been enthusiastic about this project from the very beginning. Among other things, it gives him an excuse to get back to Naval Station Newport and the Naval War College, where he spent many happy hours. And so I don't mind that motivation. He's welcome to be motivated that way. And we're thrilled to have him here. And thank you so much for your support of the Newport Forum, Mr. Secretary.
For the record, I don't underestimate Jack Reed.
Exactly. Well played, sir. And last but not least, it is personally a wonderful thing for me to have Secretary Kerry here. We've worked closely together for years on climate issues. He was a colleague in the Senate. We kicked around the idea of setting up Oceans Week in the Senate, but we were defeated by the turf battles between the committees that we tried to get to work together. Couldn't happen. And then he was selected to be the Secretary of State, and in his first meeting he said, we're going to do a big oceans conference. And now the One Oceans Conference is perhaps the biggest oceans conference in the world, and it has been immensely consequential in the global response to climate change, pollution, overfishing, and all of the hazards that the ocean faces. I will not dwell long on what climate change means for our military readiness, whether it's bases like Diego Garcia, little ones, or huge ones like Naval Station Norfolk that now have a sell-by date because of sea level rise, or whether it's the ability to deploy, train, and operate in increasingly hostile environments. We have drones that can't get on their orbits because airfields are too hot for them to taxi. Once they're flying, it's fine again because it's cooler. There are these immediate impacts that happen and that affect all of the decision-making in the armed services all the time. And of course, climate change is a well-known catalyst of conflict. And the less conflict we can catalyze, the better off we will be. So I won't dwell on that because other speakers know a lot more about those topics than I do. But I do want to leave you with one thing. If there's one thing you remember from my time at this podium today, it is this: zettajoules. Okay? Who the hell knows what zettajoules are? I barely. My wife, the marine scientist, does. So a joule is the unit of heat energy. And zeta means that it has 21 zeros behind it. The technical term is that it is a big-ass number. And to put human scale to the size of that big-ass number, the entire energy production and consumption of the human species across planet Earth is 1/2 of a zettajoule per year. And for the price of the fossil fuel component of that 1/2 zettajoule of energy, we are adding more than 12 zettajoules of heat to the oceans every year. That is an impact at epochal levels. And that is why fisheries are moving around. That is why winter flounder and lobster are no longer real fisheries here. That is why sea levels are rising. Throw in a little ocean acidification, and you have immense peril to the oceans. And when you consider how the oceans are such an elemental part of the operating system of planet Earth that keeps life safe and livable for the human species, zettajoules are things to fear when they're being poured into the ocean year after year after year. And the notion that we can do that and not face very, very grave consequences in the future is absolute folly. So I'm thrilled to have the chance to participate in this event. I think the focus on climate and national security is very timely. I know the Secretary has been very, very focused on all of that. And I honestly believe that there is no person on the planet who has done more to fend off the dangers of climate change and try to get us into a good position than Secretary Kerry. No other human. So I'm thrilled that he's here. Thank you very much.
My colleague, Mary Anderson, is going to introduce the Secretary of the Navy.
Can you tell I'm a faculty member? I'm used to wearing my flats. Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dr. Mary Anderson. I am the inaugural Brodsky Chair for American Constitutional Democracy at Salve Regina University. And I am the proud sister of a retired U.S. Marine. Yes, thank you. When you gathered last year for the kickoff forum at Newport at the Naval War College, I was not yet here. This is my first year at Salve. Our next speaker challenged the audience, largely made up of serving officers in the United States Navy, to talk to the men and women under their command about climate change, to listen to them, to understand whether this issue was fully understood throughout the force, And he didn't offer that charge simply as the 78th United States Secretary of the Navy. He did so as a 1983 graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy, a 22-year naval veteran, and as a successful business executive who understands leadership. And today, as someone who is responsible for training and equipping the finest Navy in the world, please welcome to the stage the Honorable Carlos del Toro, Secretary of the Navy.
Thank you so much, Mary. And Secretary, it's an honor to be with you again, sir. And as Senator Whitehouse said, thanks for your leadership, not just on this issue, but on so many issues. And your support of our Navy, of our sailors, of our Marines around the world has been always quite noticeable, and we're so thankful to have you in the position that you are today. Senator Whitehouse, I also want to thank you, sir, for your leadership. I was proud to have been with you at the inaugural kickoff of this tremendous conference and the One Oceans Conference as well, too. And again, your leadership on this issue is critically needed for our national security, for our nation's economic security. But also thank you for your commitment to our sailors and Marines around the world as well, too. Admiral Walker, it's good to see you. Congratulations again on taking over the reins of the Naval War College. We're extremely proud of your record of service to our nation, to our Navy, and we know that you're going to do spectacular things at the Navy War College as well. So, good afternoon, everyone. I came from a change of command ceremony at the Washington Navy Yard where the senior JAG officer of the Navy turned over and hopped on my plane, desperate to get here on time. For the record, I did make it on time. It was the fire alarm that delayed us by 5 or 10 minutes, but it's great to be here. And it is wonderful to be back here again in beautiful Newport, Rhode Island, and a privilege to address this group of future-focused leaders from Salve Regina University and the Navy War College. And for most of you, you probably understand the special relationship that Salve Regina has with the Navy War College. What you may not obviously understand is that for decades now, our naval officers have actually come and studied here at Salve Regina as well, too, in some cases getting a second master's degree. So we cannot be more appreciative for the relationship that's been ongoing for decades between these two fine universities. And I'm honored to be part of this important conference centered on an issue which affects us all, and it critically affects the national security of our great nation. To the faculty and staff of Salve Regina University and the Naval War College, distinguished guests and visitors, welcome, and again, thank you for joining us. As I am certain you are all aware, we face existential threats and challenges in every corner of the globe today. Across the Atlantic, Russia is well into its third year of its full-scale and illegal invasion of Ukraine. The United States proudly stands by the Ukrainian people as they fight for their freedom and their sovereignty and defend democracy, not just for themselves, but for all nations. And we have an obligation to continue to support our Ukrainian brothers and sisters for as long as it takes. To the south of Ukraine in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden, we're working alongside our NATO allies and Middle East partners to protect innocent civilian mariners and commercial shipping against Iranian-aligned Houthi attacks. And I refer to it as economic terrorism at its very worst. Immediately following the October 7th attacks in Israel, our Navy and our Marine Corps team, represented by the Bataan Amphibious Readiness Group and the Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group, was on station, the ready integrated force capable of responding to any threat. Today, our personnel aboard the WASP, ARG, Amphibious Readiness Group, are on station in the Mediterranean Sea, while the Theodore Roosevelt Carrier Strike Group and the Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group are operating in the Middle East. In addition to our surface presence, the USS Georgia, SSG 729, provides a powerful deterrence message from below the ocean's waves. And for the first time since World War II, we face a comprehensive maritime power in the Indo-Pacific. The People's Republic of China continues to exert its excessive maritime claims through their Navy, Coast Guard, and maritime militia. From the line of actual control high in the Himalayas to disputed reefs barely peeking above the waves in the South China Sea, recent actions reveal the PRC's willingness to execute, quote, gray zone tactics, unquote, types of assault which are below the threshold of armed attack, but beyond normal diplomatic actions. And the PRC is observing lessons from the ongoing conflicts in Europe and the Red Sea. And so on. Now more than ever, it is imperative that we have a climate-ready force able to deter aggression and function decisively in every environment so that, if necessary, we will prevail in conflict. When I entered office as Secretary of the Navy, I laid out 3 enduring priorities, which are the foundation for all that we do in the Department of the Navy. They are to strengthen our maritime dominance in every possible domain, to build a culture of warfighting excellence, and enhance strategic partnerships around the globe. My priority of strengthening maritime dominance centers on ensuring that our sailors and Marines have the best ships, aircraft, technology available, so that if we are called, we may fight and decisively win our nation's wars. And to maintain our warfighting edge, we cannot rely simply on maintaining our sea power. External threats continue to mount and change the environment in which we work in. To remain the world's dominant maritime force, the Department of the Navy must rapidly adopt and effectively counter existential threats such as climate change. Today, climate change is one of the most destabilizing forces of our time, exacerbating national security concerns and posing serious readiness challenges for both our fleet and our force. There exist numerous tangible examples of the impact of climate change on Navy and Marine Corps operations all over the world. And the frequency and the intensity of extreme weather events has only increased as time has passed. Just this morning, all you had to do was turn on CNN to a report of extremely high temperatures in the south and in the west, far higher than ever before. This is going to continue, and we have to find ways to mitigate this and to live with it. And the frequency and intensity of extreme weather events has only increased as time has passed. At sea and on shore, changing climate and rising sea levels crucially affect the day-to-day lives of our sailors and our Marines. As I said, rising temperatures stress and impact the systems within our buildings and our installations, greatly decreasing their overall durability. Who would have imagined that even here in Newport, Rhode Island, the dormitories, which our young sailors and Marines live in, would need air conditioning? In the old days when I studied here, you just simply opened the window. And that was only, 2 months out of the year? Well, it's getting a lot hotter now, isn't it? And we have to find the need and the resources to actually put air conditioning into many of these dormitories. And that's just one small example. But along both our Pacific and Atlantic coasts, sorties or deploying our ships due to the threat of extreme weather in port have become more commonplace. Our maritime forces have witnessed a substantial rise in the number and scope of humanitarian assistance and disaster relief measures because of this. Simply put, weather impacts normal Navy and Marine Corps operations every single day. Weather impacts where our ships can sail, where our amphibious craft can land, and when we can conduct flight operations. However, while our world today faces increasingly unpredictable and devastating weather phenomena, the Department of the Navy is strengthening our climate resilience and reducing our climate impacts to remain the world's most powerful maritime force. Computer scientist, pioneer, mathematician, visionary, and United States Rear Admiral, female, Grace Hopper once said, and I quote, "The most dangerous phrase in the language is, 'We've always done it this way.'" I implore all of you to assume Admiral Hopper's mindset when approaching the challenge of climate change. The Department of the Navy is actively adapting and innovating for the changing landscape of the world and indeed of warfare. Regardless of what all our critics may actually say, it is imperative that we take this action with courage of conviction and with the necessary resources to be able to make the difference. We refuse stagnation and have set out ambitious climate goals through the Department of the Navy's Climate Action 2030 strategy, in line with Executive Order 14008, tackling the climate crisis at home and abroad. To build a climate-ready force, we must meet 2 performance goals. The first goal is building climate resilience. We build climate resilience through installation resilience, by ensuring that our forces, systems, and facilities can continue to operate effectively and accomplish our mission in the face of changing climate conditions and worsening climate impacts. Many of our military bases, including our Navy's largest, Naval Station Norfolk, are fighting a constant battle against rising sea levels, often flooding even after light rains occur. Less than 2 years ago, we broke ground on the first project to safeguard the Naval Academy from rising sea levels. And just last week, we held a ribbon cutting to mark the end of our work on the Farragut Seawall project, the first of many climate-related projects to fortify and protect the institution from extreme weather events. Our goal, as outlined in the Naval Academy Installation Resiliency Plan, is for the institution to remain resilient through the 21st century and beyond. We are also developing solutions to climate issues through the Center for Energy Security and Infrastructure Resilience. Established early this year, CSER will equip, you know how much we love acronyms, right? Will equip our future Navy and Marine Corps officers with the knowledge and skills to address complex climate challenges throughout their naval careers from the very beginning of the time that they are midshipmen at the Naval Academy. And we're hoping to do the same thing, bring this awareness to all our midshipmen in our ROTC units and for those that actually go into OCS as well. What's more, the Department of the Navy is investing in climate resilience through our facilities, including the renovation of Bancroft Hall, the largest dormitory on the face of the earth. And it's home to the entire brigade of 4,400 midshipmen. Severe weather events have impacted the longevity of our buildings, both inside and out, along with integral systems such as Bancroft Hall's HVAC system. And I hope to make it the largest green dormitory in the world. Given the criticality of our facilities to the mission of the United States Navy and Marine Corps and developing our future warfighters, we must continue to invest in maintenance and improvements of our infrastructure. And partnerships outside the Department of the Navy are crucial to creating climate solutions. We cannot do this alone. We all have to work together. In 2022, the Navy Postgraduate School partnered with the Stanford Dorr School of Sustainability to address the urgent challenges of climate change, energy security, and sustainability. Together, the Navy Postgraduate School and Stanford University established an education partnership agreement, combining the expertise of two globally recognized hubs of research and innovation to create practical solutions that our Navy and our nation can implement both now and well into the future. The Department of the Navy is preparing for extreme weather events through integrated tabletop exercises and training events. 2 years ago, the Department of the Navy held our first climate action tabletop exercise at Marine Barracks, Washington, and have since held annual exercises dedicated to drive and share climate best practices, not just amongst ourselves, but with our allies and partners. In June of this year, we conducted Climate Action 3 with all our Caribbean partners in San Juan, Puerto Rico. The two-day event marked the third iteration in a series of exercises specifically designed to validate our Climate Action 2030 strategy and highlight the value of partnerships to build shared resilience in a critical region. And I cannot begin to tell you how thankful and grateful our allies and partners in the Caribbean basin are, as well as in the Pacific as well, too, to be working with us on all these issues across the board. We've developed a dashboard through the Office of Naval Research, for example, that we're sharing with these small island nations so that they can immediately address at the very highest levels of government in their countries the issues of climate. Our department, together with the Department of Defense, our federal agencies, non-governmental organizations, and other Caribbean partners, shared experience and solutions to the destabilizing threats which know absolutely no borders. The second goal of our climate action strategy is reducing climate threat itself. This includes reducing greenhouse gas emissions and drawing greenhouse gases out of the atmosphere, stabilizing ecosystems, and achieving the nation's commitment to net zero emissions. And throughout the country, the Department of the Navy is leading the Department of Defense efforts in reducing climate threats. In 2022, Marine Logistics Base Albany became an electrically net zero base, crucially becoming the first Department of Defense installation to attain this significant milestone. And it was no easy task. It took years to effect that change. Achieving this net zero breakthrough not only combats climate change by alleviating energy security concerns, but it also improves the base's overall resilience and saves taxpayer dollars as well, too. We cannot tackle the climate threat alone. The Department of the Navy has facilitated strategic partnerships to tackle energy resilience issues. Marine Corps Base Air Station Miramar partnered with the City of San Diego, uses biogas generated from an on-base landfill as renewable energy source. This initiative provided over 3 megawatts of energy to the installation, reducing reliance on the city's electric grid by a whopping 45% and reducing overall emissions as well. department is leveraging public and private innovation in the climate and energy resilience sectors through Naval X tech bridges and business accelerators, working very closely with the Department of Energy as well. But tech bridges attract small and medium-sized businesses using innovative challenges, and recent challenges are supporting maritime supply chain and blue tech opportunities throughout the entire enterprise. These partnerships between the Department of the Navy and outside businesses foster innovation and encourage the development of new technologies for climate adaptation. They enhance our economic security in every possible way. To remain competitive in today's age of conflict, we must leverage every advantage available to us. And that especially includes our partners in business and in industry as well. The future of climate resilience is here. We know the future impacts of climate change, and it is both within our capabilities and incumbent upon us to act, and we have acted. Climate resilience is force resilience. It's combat readiness. We must look beyond normal operations and approach solutions to climate change through the lens of innovation. As Admiral Hopper said again, I quote, "Our young people are the future. We must provide for them," unquote. To do so, we must continue innovating and modernizing for the threats of today and tomorrow. I thank all of you for being here today to gather, to discuss, to create solutions for a more climate resilient future. Although climate change is already impacting our world in significant ways, I am heartened by the discussions that will take place here this weekend over the next several days, the important work all of you have begun and continue to do together, and the innovation that will come from our collaboration. I thank you for tackling this challenge. We need our best and brightest involved in the search for climate solutions for the benefit of our service members, civilians, for the benefit of our children and our grandchildren, more importantly. May God bless our servicemen and women and all who support them. Thank you so very much. Doing Q&A, or are we? Oh, good. And here I thought Senator Kerry would answer all the hard questions. I'll see you later tonight, sir.
Okay. Is it working? Can you hear me? Perfect. All right, so I'm, again, Mary. Nice to see everyone. You're still with us. I'm going to moderate some Q&A for the secretary. So if you guys can raise your hand, someone will come around with a microphone. If you can stand up, introduce yourself, and address the secretary with your question, that would be great. Thank you. Yep. Thank you, Jim.
Sir, what are our adversaries doing?
Please tell me who you are.
I'm Catherine Aldrich. I'm a trustee here at Salve, and until recently, I was a senior executive with the Marine Corps.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you for your service. And your question was, what are
our adversaries doing?
Unfortunately, I don't think our adversaries are doing much with regards to protecting against the ills of climate change. I would argue they're probably contributing to it more than anything else. And it's a shame. And I think that, you know, efforts like Senator Kerry's, and he's traveled to China and to other places, or he's traveled everywhere around the globe to talk to anyone that will listen about the importance of this issue and how we have to all work together to mitigate the results, or otherwise it'll be to the detriment of ourselves, our children, and our grandchildren. But regretfully, you know, too many other countries just don't take this as serious as we do. And it's a shame. But it should also, I think, it should strengthen our resolve to try to do more and to continue to set the example for all countries around the globe. And it's more than just a national endeavor. I mean, I just finished talking about what it is that the Department of the Navy has taken on in of its own, and that could be replicated in the Department of the Army and the Department of the Air Force as well, too. We take this very, very seriously. Secretary of Defense Austin takes it very seriously, as does Deputy Secretary of Defense Hicks as well, too, and we're working collaboratively across the department to try to make the globe a safer place for our future generations. But it is unfortunate that so many other adversaries and countries that are the worst producers of the negative sides of this that aren't taking it as seriously. But we will continue to work together to try to make it better.
Another question right here in front.
Take your time. Don't be nervous.
I'm Tristan Corbishley. I'm 11-year-old. I
You want to join the Navy?
no.
No? Marine
No.
Corps?
My occupation is a child. Currently. But
I love it. My occupation is being a child.
thank you. Would you say that the degradation and plausible destruction of certain naval bases in the future due to sea level rise influence the defense? Certain geographically significant naval bases due to sea level rise. Do you think that will influence the defense strategy of the Navy in the future?
Well, this is a very smart child. We definitely got to get him in, Admiral. That's a great question. And what's really important for leaders throughout our entire society on this issue, including military leaders like myself and others, is to try to predict what's going to happen in the future and to try to do everything well in advance, to try to position ourselves in a better place to be more climate ready, basically. And I often say that climate readiness equals combat readiness. And so if you just take our ships, for example, on our bases and our major bases, any base actually, as sea levels continue to rise, we're going to have to elevate those piers. We're going to have to put electrical equipment on those piers further up away from the waters themselves, right? In Norfolk, Virginia, we have these double-decker piers, and when they were first built, all the electrical equipment was put on the lower level. Well, now we've moved that to the upper level as well, too. But trying to predict and stay ahead of the problem so that we can actually defend against it is what we have a responsibility to do, and to take these issues extremely seriously, open-eyed about them and the costs associated with them so that we can plan accordingly. It's a very, very good question you asked. And if you reconsider joining the Navy, let me know, okay? Don't worry, your hair will grow back eventually.
I met Tristan earlier when we were sitting here in the front row before things got started, and he, fantastic. I'm glad that you asked a question. Who else? Oh, yeah, right here. Oh, is there not a microphone? Sorry. Oh, okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
Jim Moore, retired businessman and Vietnam veteran. I grew up in a military family and went to high school in Alaska. And I now watch fires burn all the time in central Alaska and in Canada as the Arctic changes dramatically. And I'm wondering what the Navy, the Russians, I think, have 30 some odd icebreakers to break the ice. It's disappearing rapidly in the Arctic. And I'm wondering what the Navy's strategy is for Arctic climate change in particular.
So as you may know, and first and foremost, thank you for your service, especially your service in Vietnam. It was my generation. It was my generation of servicemen who followed in your footsteps, and you were the mentors to my generation who served in active duty. With regards to climate change in the polar regions, obviously, it's extremely important. And obviously, as the ice continues to melt and new channels continue to open for both exploration and, more importantly, for trade, it's incumbent on us to prepare, as I told this young man earlier. The Department of Defense just put out their climate strategy. The Navy is following. We've been waiting on them to put it out, and we're following suit with our own. But it's obviously going to take greater investment, greater thought. And I'll just give you one example. As we build our next generation class of ships, the frigates and the Arleigh Burke destroyers and others that will follow, it's important to reinforce those hulls, for example, so that we can operate more time in the high north. Forget about just in the polar regions themselves, but even in the high north, because there are extreme complexities to operating in the high north. So we have to be prepared to do that. There's no question that our nation suffers from a shortage of icebreakers. But the great thing, too, is that we've got amazing allies and partners. And so working together with our Nordic allies and partners, for example, who have tremendous subject matter expertise and capability when it comes to icebreakers, but working together amongst NATO nations, for example, to address these challenges that we face are going to continue to be extremely important for us. And there's no question that the PRC is also looking at exploiting the polar regions as well too, and they actually have 3 icebreakers that they're deploying right now to explore. It's an exercise that they're conducting. So this is of extreme importance to us. I always like to say, unfortunately, though, that there never is enough resources to go around to do everything. So we have to approach this with a degree of balance and compromise as well too, to try to get to a better place. Yes, sir.
We have time for one more question, Sherry.
Sherry, it's good,
Hey.
so good to see you, ma'am.
Great to see you,
Thank
Mr.
you for your
Secretary.
many years of leadership to our country.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And you were on time, but you did miss the great panel that Andrea Cameron, Captain Cameron, and I had. So tribute to your Navy leader here, who we had a very nice discussion about my new book, Threat Multiplier,
Outstanding.
Climate, Military Leadership, and the Fight for Global
I'll
Security.
have to buy a copy of it.
You will. I have a copy,
Yes.
and I cite you in it. And
I don't like asking authors for free copies. I
Okay.
like,
All right.
no, when you're an author, you got to sell those books.
I'm happy if you would buy a copy, and all the others here,
So.
too. Great. Okay, you answered the Arctic question, which Andrea and I did not get to discuss on our panel, but I know that you spent a lot of time leaning forward into climate security, where we face our foes and our adversaries, particularly in the Indo-Pacific.
Yes.
So share with us how your understanding about how you think China and the PLA in particular, is thinking about climate, both their own vulnerabilities and how they were going to use it against us, with our allies and partners.
Yeah,
in
no,
that
that's a
region.
great question. I said earlier in my speech, I talked about my 3 guiding principles, basically, and one of them, the third, is strengthening our alliances and our partnerships, right, with those that we care most, our different stakeholders, whether it be Congress, whether it be academia, whether it be business, but most importantly, our allies and partners. And in the past 3 years since I've been Secretary of the Navy, along with everyone else in the department, quite frankly, we've been super hyper-focused on the Pacific, with China as our pacing threat. The relationships, the exchanges that we've built with our smaller nations in the Pacific, throughout Oceania, throughout the Blue Pacific, are extremely important. And when I talk to these smaller countries and nations, they typically highlight, what is it that keeps you up at night? Well, it's typically 2 things that keeps them up at night. It's the invasion of their extended economic zone, particularly with regards to illegal fishing that takes place, and it's climate. They're already experiencing outlying islands, for example, in their countries. Many of these countries have hundreds of islands, but many of them are already being overtaken by rising sea levels. Forcing basically indigenous people who've lived on those islands for generations to have to move away from those islands to the bigger islands, so that they can simply be safe and continue their way of life. This is an existential threat, both there and in the Caribbean as well too, because we see it in the Caribbean as well, with increased tornadoes and thunderstorms and everything else that's taking place. So there's no question that we have to continue to work together to support these island nations that have been strong allies and partners of the United States for many years. Continue to support them in every way possible. And every agency within the interagency has to do our part. One of the things that we've done in the Office of Naval Research is we've developed basically a blueprint, basically a dashboard, climate dashboard for senior leaders that can use this, and we offer it to them so that they could use it to make intelligent decisions based on the resources that they do have, and then we work very, very closely with them. So unquestionably, and it's done, again, in trying to build trust amongst nations. What you see sometimes in the interactions with China is that it's not really about trust. It's about, what they want to gain by this. And there's a desperate need, obviously, in many of these countries for resources and such. So China sometimes is able to gain a foothold that we necessarily sometimes struggle with. But eventually, they truly understand the trusting nature of the relationship and who's truly going to be there for you at the end of the day. And I think it does make a difference in the Pacific. It makes a difference all over the world. So that's our obligation, is to continue to strive to work closely with them to help them solve their problems and with what resources we can afford to do so with. Thank you. Well, again, it is a pleasure to be here. I'm so glad I made it on time. Young man, I'm giving your mother my phone number. If you change your mind, you can go to the Naval Academy or anywhere else you want to go. And thank you so much for that great question. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Secretary Del Toro.